Harlan Fear did mulligan to 6 cards, scried to the top in this affair. Zach Kiihne is on 7.
Working on it or not?
Find out who's on the play and starts things off. Looks like Harlan won the die roll. Get a Lava Runner off of a Mountains where he starts. Taps Temple Garden for Kiihne.
Yeah, and because there's a backup match, sometimes slight mistakes or whatever don't quite get caught in time. The playmat a little askew, so apologies for that, but be able to see most of the action, I'm sure.
Turn 2 for Harlan, knocked Kiihne down to 19, cast the light up the stage, got a Mountain off that. Going into his turn 3, he's going to cast the other card he found, a Runaway Steamkin. Wizard's Lightning on a Thorn Lieutenant that Kiihne played on turn 2. Now the Lava Runner up to it, 2-2.
Now, I'll say this, Thorn Lieutenant usually quite good against aggressive decks, but notably this start from Harlan kind of invalidates the 1 power, 1 toughness body of the token. Wizard's Lightning on the 2-3 clears it so that Gitsu Lava Runner can come in for 2, and even though Harlan is starting to run a little on resources, there's a chance he follows this up with a big 4-drop play in next turn, and might go off after that with that Runaway Steamkin.
Yeah, Harlan playing a 2-2 split of Chandra, Fire Artisan, and Experimental Frenzy. Those are the 4 drops, so they can really run away with the game. With the Steamkin, we go Kiihne's way. He's going to Convoke using that Elf token he got on the Thorn Lieutenant. Going to cast Conclave Tribunal, solve that Steamkin. Harlan's going to chip in once again for 2, Kiihne to 15, and there's that 4-drop, Chandra, Fire Artisan. Yeah,
and with Kiihne using that Conclave Tribunal, it's going to be pretty hard to get this off the table, but looks like Zachary going to play Sapperling Migration, make 2 tokens, and then play Venerated Luxon. So he's generating quite a bit of power on this turn. So he can actually threaten to attack down the Chandra next turn if he has a way to clear off 1 or 2 blockers from Harlan's side.
Yeah, there was a ton of power. Harlan's going to put that Chandra up to 6, found a Mountain. Vishino Pyromancer is the only spell he's able to cast. Kiihne's going to take that hit to 13, but Harlan no longer in a position to attack whatsoever.
Yeah, this battlefield from Kiihne's side is rather daunting. Now, here's a chance from Zach Kiihne to really pivot in this game. If he goes after Harlan's life total, he can potentially close the game in 3 attacks, maybe 2 if he has a really big board. But if he goes after Chandra, his life total is decreasing by at least 6 no matter what he does, because if he kills it this turn, he's taking 6 to the face, put him down to 7. Harlan just needs to sling together like 3 burn spells to close the job. That's not that big of an ask from a burn deck, but if Kiihne goes after the life total, he can maybe potentially ignore the Chandra for a few turns.
So Kiihne made a pretty conservative attack, just the Loxodon at the Chandra. That connected. Fear takes those 4 points from the Chandra, points them at Kiihne. Kiihne to 9. Amara is the follow-up, and here's another Venerated Loxodon, so he gets that lifelink token off the Amara.
Yeah, and this is the reason why he kind of went halfway, because he had that other big Convoke card, and now he actually does he have 20 power on the battlefield? Let's see, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 21 power on the battlefield now. So can present lethal with an attack next turn. Obviously, Harlan going to have to do some blocks. And now the Chandra, even though it generates an extra card every turn, is no longer threatening ultimate, which almost always ends the game that turn.
So there was a Lightning Strike which put Kiihne to 6. The Chandra is going to find a Fanatical Firebrand. There's a Runaway Steamkin to go with it. So a couple more creatures for Fear. Life total is 20 to 6 as Kiihne is going to turn all those creatures sideways.
Yeah, this is a pretty aggressive attack from Kiihne because he is at 6 and he's going to be going up to 7 off the lifelink. But you have to imagine he has at least 1, maybe 2 follow-up creatures to present blockers. And Harlan has to block with at least 1 creature to not be dead.
Yep, replacing that blocker with the Amara, definitely good. Harlan's going to line up a lot of blocks. At least 2.
Yeah, so Harlan here going to chump the lifelink token before combat damage. Going to pop off the other lifelink token, so no life is going to be gained. And -1 blocker from Kiihne, but looks like he has multiple blockers to follow it up with.
Yeah, History of Benalia plus another Amara. Woo! So 2 2/2s go Harlan's way, plus his Chandra, it's a Mountain. And just another Mountain in hand, he's got to pick him up. Zach Kiihne takes down game 1.
Just well navigated from Harlan, but just missed at the end when he really needed another burn spell. And honestly, for me, that's why I really like playing with and against mono red, because win or lose, it's going to be a sweat almost every time.
Yeah, definitely a really interesting back and forth there. We should have these decks up on Cardboard Live, so you can go ahead and take a look at the sideboards, see what the players are going to do. For Harlan Fear, options for him for Lava Coil, 2 Direfleet Daredevil, 3 Tybalt, Rakish Instigator, 2 Risk Factor, 3 Rekindling Phoenix, and an Experimental Frenzy.
So Frenzy is a huge card in this matchup. It allows you to just overpower your opponent, even if they have those really powerful Venerated Luxodon draws. So I definitely like bringing that in. I think that Harlan would have won that game pretty easily, actually, if Experimental Frenzy was Chandra. Or vice versa, excuse me. So, I definitely think he's bringing that in. I mean, it's not like Chandra's bad. Obviously, it was great that game. Dealt 4 damage to Kiihne as well as generated, 2 or 3 extra cards. So,
yep.
Really powerful stuff. I think Lava Coil can come in, too. Those 2 drops from Kiihne are quite annoying for your creatures, and you're almost always going to have some target for it, so it's never going to be a dead card. And then Tibalt Rakish Instigator might be good against all these 1/1s because it generates a devil that can block and or attack into a couple of 1/1s. I don't really like the Rekindling Phoenix, though. Even though it flies, it's a little slow, and you want your 4-drops to have a significant impact on the game at hand.
Right, and the removal from Kiihne is likely going to exile creatures anyway, so the upside doesn't really come into play here.
Right.
And then for Zach Kiihne, the sideboard,
you can't read it.
3 Gideon Blackblade. I'm going to try to get through this. It's if y'all at home have a better view of this, so using the app. 1 Johnny Adversarial Tyrants, 3 Baffling Ends, 2 Prison Realms, a Sorcerer's Spyglass, 2 additional March of the Multitudes, and 3 Knight of Autumn. I got there.
Yeah, and a lot of these cards are going to be good in this matchup. Knight of Autumn has versatility in that it's a body that can either gain 4 life, be big enough to eat 2-power creatures, or potentially destroy a Experimental Frenzy. So I like those. The 2 more March of the Multitudes I don't think come in because Chain Whirler oftentimes knocks off some of your early threats, so you pretty rarely have a bunch of creatures to convoke a big March of the Multitudes. You need to kind of do what Kiihne did, where you want to small ball some of those Venerated Luxodons, pump 1 or 2 creatures, have it kind of snowball from there. And then maybe you want to bring in some of the removal spells like Baffling End and Prison Realm just to contain some of those early threats from Harlan. Being on the draw in Game 2 here might be pretty tough. I'm actually curious to see how Zach Kiihne approaches this particular matchup.
In Week 1 in Richmond, we saw Will Pulliam win the Open with Mono Red Aggro.
Yep.
Had 4 main deck copies of Chandra Fire Artisan.
Yep.
In Game 1, Harlan's 4-drop was Chandra. Given that, do you think there's an argument for Sorcerer's Spyglass?
I don't. It has very limited use in the matchup, and as you see that game, Kiihne, most Planeswalkers in Standard, you can not afford to ignore. At some point, they're just going to take over the game. But these new Planeswalkers that have statics, and even this one in Chandra, it's a little slow to ultimate or whatever. It's not something that Kiihne necessarily needs to deal with immediately or deal with permanently, preemptively. And, you saw that game, it potentially could have killed him, but it wasn't the end-all, be-all.
You know what I'm excited about right now? The fact that in the feature match we have a card with Tibalt in the name, likely to see play.
Yeah, I do think the new Tibalt is quite good. The Rakish Instigator static effect of your opponent can't gain life is obviously pretty good for a red deck.
Fear started off with Fanatical Firebrand. That connected twice before Kiihne played a Thorn Lieutenant, and things are pretty slow for Fear. No 3rd land drop, just has to pass on turn 3.
Yeah, and even though he has a removal spell, the Thorn Lieutenant's 1/1 body that it creates means that the Fanatical Firebrand can't attack, and that's why Thorn Lieutenant is so good in this matchup.
Kiihne is actually just going to attack with the Lieutenant, follow that with History of Benalia. A lot of pressure there. And step Lightning Strike on the Knight token for Fear, so the Firebrand will connect. Kiihne to 17, there's the 3rd land.
One thing people don't do enough, in my opinion, is try to turn the corner and get aggressive against mono red. If you give them a long enough time frame, they're going to burn you out. That's what their deck does. So the faster the game ends, the better for you if you're ahead. And sometimes you need to gamble just a little bit. And in this scenario, the gamble was literally your opponent has to throw a removal spell at one of your 2/2 Knight tokens, and that's not a big deal.
Yeah, and Harlan's going to keep using these burn spells just as a removal. He took care of the Knight token as the Thorn Lieutenant hit him. Shocks and Amara that Zach played as well, but now he has 2 Thorn Lieutenants, and here's Tristani. That's going to pump up the team, make those lifelink tokens, and attack for 6, Fear down to 10.
That's not Tristani. That's game over.
Okay.
Harlan here just taking a huge chunk of damage from Kiihne's board, and there's not a lot he can do about it.
Yeah, Fear's just got to shock that lifelink token. You can't really stomach that swing. Creature's just going to rumble across. Fear down to 2.
Yeah, and, just really late on the experimental frenzy, and obviously Kiihne's virtual card advantage by generating a lot of tokens.